there's this new show called We Are Lady Parts, and it's gotten mixed reactions and reviews online, as any show with this sort of character depictions would get.
Yeah, it's like basically a show about a band, I believe, with a lot of Muslim characters, right, Hassan?
Yeah, they're trying to start a female, like all sister Muslim punk rock band, right?
And yeah, like Hassan actually told us about the show, so you watched it, but I've seen this reaction over shows like this a lot, where
every time there's a Muslim show,
there was
backlash.
There was like a TikTok that I saw specifically that like this guy, he's auditioning for a Muslim character in like a new show that someone's making. And then, the guy asked him like, hey, like, are you Muslim? He's like, yeah, I am. He's like, would you be willing to do this, and that, like drink and do this and do that? And like all things that, people would get annoyed at typically.
Yeah.
And then he was like, yeah, I'm down for it. And then at the end of the interview, he goes, oh, by the way, I'm not actually Muslim. And so that's, how a lot of people feel when it comes to shows where it's just like, oh, we finally get representation. Oh, but they have to be depicted in a rebellious way. Yeah. So that's what the backlash comes from, because it's never like, oh, this character is just going to be like a normal, Muslim person.
It seemed that way like in Master of None in the first few episodes. I've only watched the first few episodes of season 1. But they were like, pork is so delicious and like I want to eat it so badly. And I'm like, it's not that serious. Like,
well, also Aziz Ansari, like he says that he's not non-practicing. And I think that it's his show, right? Like he created the show. And so I think he's
it's
making
an
an effort.
overemphasis. It's like you could have just had it a side thing, but they made a whole episode about them going out to eat pork and how delicious it is. Like that's excessive.
But the point is, I think that like that's what gets the attention.
Well, it's also his story.
It's his story for sure.
Yeah.
But like it's you're not gonna. We come on this podcast every time and we share certain topics and stories. Out of all the things that we go through and witness, there's a reason that we pick the things that we do. If you listen to this podcast and you listen to every episode, you'd be like, oh my God, these guys, like, they're crazy in this way, or like they're always going through something. But like that's not the case. We just pick the ones that would.
I don't know.
I'm
definitely always going through something.
Yeah, I mean, you got paranoia. She's got.
Yeah.
She's got what?
She's
just kidding.
Always going through something.
The thing with this show, right? Because you were talking about the rebellious Muslim, or that's usually what's portrayed in the different shows. This, like, they took very. This wasn't rebellious and towards Islam. It was just they actually took different. I feel like these types of Muslims are not represented at all. And then
what is that? What's
what
these
is
types?
that?
So there's a few different ones. So you have Syra, who's a singer. She non-hijabi, but she's still religious. She still prays. Has a boyfriend, and she's the head of this punk rock band. The first song they open up, they're singing like pretty much protesting honor killings, right? That's the song. That's like the introduction to the band, right? Then you have Mumtaz, who's the manager, Niqabi, always dressed up with some crazy stuff. Like she's got like those lace rose black gloves on her,
very
with, like, the whole
stylish,
outfit, and then she's got the vape blowing through the mask and everything. Her character specifically, she wears her niqab when she's around the sisters, even if it's just the sisters, because it makes her feel powerful. They did an interview with that, and her character specifically, they interviewed someone who the character was kind of modeled after her, I think. Then you have Aisha, who's a hijabi, and she's actually gay in the series. Ends up having a relationship with a girlfriend. Now, all these, are they the quote model Muslim? Well, when you really break it down, no one's really a model Muslim, right?
Yeah.
But these are real Muslims, women that are out there. And then you have also Bisma. She's got the African head wrap, and I wish they did more about her character. She didn't stand out to me, but you have all these real profiles that some people can relate with, right? Because when you hear the outrage go about, we need to find someone who represents us, the good Muslim. What is that? Because no matter what you do, you're getting judged for not being the good Muslim. I don't care where you're going.
It's really hard to capture what a Muslim is, and when even on a cultural basis, right? There's so many different types of people out there that are from different cultures and different upbringings, and frankly, just behave and act in different ways. And that's the truth. that's the truth, right? To your thing about the model Muslim, yeah, there is, right? It would be the Prophet, peace be upon him, which that's who is supposed to be the model that we like literally do things as he would do, which is the Sunnah. I think that in a show like this,
and even that's up for discussion.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, interestingly enough.
But we're not supposed to say that.
Well, I mean, like,
you know what I mean on that.
Yeah.
We're not going to pretend to be scholars or anything
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
But the point is,
Exactly.
like, that's what the general sort of belief is.
Yeah.
And when it comes to a show like this, like, it sounds like they're trying to capture different characters, and now they have a Muslim background, which, like, you might see those characters in a show like that. I don't think it would throw anybody off if those characters were just those characters, right? But then when you have a religion thrown into it, then that's where that group of people, and Muslims beyond anybody, I think, are the most critical when it comes to how they are depicted, right? So that's the backlash for it. I did see this thing that Riz Ahmed was sharing recently, which was saying that we need more Muslim characters in TVs and movies, because every time they are, and we've known this for a while, but anytime that they do have a character, it's always going after certain stereotypes and all of that, right? And he says that, like, that's the reason why we have certain Islamophobic attacks on people, like the hate attacks that we have. And like he was talking about that attack that happened in London,
Canada.
Yeah, in Canada, and where there was a whole family that was slaughtered, you know, by car, because of the way that they look like. They were just taking a walk, and it left one member of the family who was a 9-year-old boy, you know, as the only surviving member of that family. So for all of this, I mean, Riz Ahmed, what he's trying to get at is like all these things linked together.
Yeah.
And so he's saying that like we need more just Muslim characters. And I think that like a show like this would actually help his case maybe, because it's not just the stereotypical roles that you see where it's like a terrorist, you know, a taxi driver, whatever, 7-Eleven worker. And so
on the flip side too, when you look at the people wanting the ideal religious Muslim, like when we had Tone Trump, you know, on the show, he talked about like, I'm going to dress like me. I'm not going to dress like a Mufti Mink. You know, it's about, you know, and what Aman said, Islam isn't supposed to take over you. It's supposed to accentuate what your culture is. And that gets lost a lot. And I think stuff like this is bringing it back to that.
Yeah.
I think it would just help that, like, you know, yeah, we've had a lot of these things like in characters like in this show, We Are Lady Parts, where they are taking the more sort of like rebellious approach. But what if it was a show where it's just like, I guess, a more religious person?
I mean, I hate the word normalize, but I think that's like a proper term to use here, is like normalizing just Muslim characters that are just normal in these shows and in movies and stuff like that. And, you know, I think we talked about it too a long time ago, but Spider-Man actually had like a hijabi character, and she was just a normal girl. Like there was no mention of her being like Muslim or anything. She was just a normal girl. Like
it was just physically a hijabi girl in the movie Spider-Man.
Yeah, which was like dope, you know? And there's other movies that are coming out where it's just, you know, you see a Muslim guy as the main character or something like that. So that, you know, people that are not usually used to seeing those type of people, especially in like Midwest areas and all that stuff, they can be like, oh, it's like...
I think it's slowly becoming normal. And I saw like in a Bollywood movie, I think 2 years ago, Veer the Wedding. And it was the first time I had seen, like, especially in brown movies, where a gay person was not brought up as being gay. They just were gay. And I think that slowly in Hollywood, that's happening with Muslims. Like slowly, we're going to just be Muslim without having to be Muslim.
Yeah, like physically just being there. And that's the one that I like the most, where it's not like, we haven't seen the show. So do you think that in this show, are they really going after like, oh, like here are my values and like, here's who I am, and like talking about their religion a lot, or are they just
no?
Being
So
themselves?
like the religion is more it's a part of their life, but it's not a religious TV show, right? It's they put it in there to where it's not it kind of is the focus. It is like it's hard to put into words, but like anybody can watch. You don't have to be Muslim to watch it. You know, it's like take a Christian household for example. Hey, I want to do like Footloose. I want to dance, but my father's the pastor and he has a problem with this when really there's nothing wrong here. The main character Amina, she comes from the whole circle of friends who are very judgmental. You have to be this kind of Muslim. You have to get married by X certain time. And then she meets this punk rock band who's looking for a guitarist. That's the main plot because Amina's the main character, not the 4 original girls that are in the band. And then she's finding herself, and her parents are the dopest. Like, okay, every time she's meeting a man, they embarrass her. But there's some part where things kind of get dark, and the parents like, "What's wrong? We thought you liked this musician and this and this and this." And she's like, "My friends told me that's all haram." They're like, okay, come on, that's up for discussion. Come on now. Like, really? So it really breaks down the barriers of these conversations to where, especially in the households where it's like, oh no, it's either haram or halal. Haram, halal. This kind of opens that up and go, hey, all these are Muslim, whether they're right or wrong, whatever they're going through, it doesn't take away the fact that they're Muslim. And that's not even the focus. It's just, it just brings it all together.
Yeah. I think that's better because there's so many times where like Muslim people are represented as like, oh, my parents are so strict, I have to go home now. Or like, it's all about them being Muslim. But like when you think about our real lives, we aren't being Muslim, we just are Muslim.
Exactly.
And I think that's cool that they're just representing people who are being Muslim, who just are Muslim rather than the show actively having to be about Muslims. And Rami, it was a little bit annoying that it was like that. I understand it was about his religious journey, so it kind of had to be like that. But it felt like it was so centered around haram and halal constantly that that's kind of where I personally feel like all the outrage was coming from because it was so centered on haram and halal. And when you talk about that stuff, then there is room for debate. But if you're just being you in the show and you aren't a perfect person, then you can't really blame somebody for being that. But when you put them on there and you're deliberately like, I'm a Muslim, and then literally showing them like throw back a shot, like you don't need to do that at the same time.
Especially for the younger folks at home who are like, yeah, I want to be Muslim, but I'm struggling with this or this. Oh, I'm not dressing up in a thobe every day. Oh, that must mean I can't be Muslim. And this kind of fights that.
I think that's what scares people the most is when there are those debates or like there's a character consciously picking a choice and then it could teach somebody because I think that I've learned so much watching TV and movies that on a certain level a lot of those characters you find out why something they did is clearly wrong or clearly right. And when you have
like a lesson being learned.
Right. And when you have certain situations where it's just like, if you have religion in it and somebody sees that and that's their way of getting knowledge, then it might scare some people of like, man, this is not the way that it should be taught or anything. And of course, like the creators, like Rami says, like, don't watch my show for these reasons. Yeah. I'm sharing like just 4 stories here about these characters. But I mean, even in the show, Rami clearly knows like the path that he is quote unquote supposed to go, the quote he wants to go, and what he actually does and the consequences for that. So if you watch that show, I think with a mature background, right? Like where we, at our age, we can watch it and we can say like, Rami, no, don't do that. Or like, good, that's what you get. Whereas somebody who's younger might watch that and be like, oh, like cool. Like Rami did that. Like, oh, he's Muslim too. I think that's what might scare people. And I understand. And it's hard to avoid because for us, it's not going to be just like some, white kid sitting there watching like a movie and being like, oh yeah, like Matt Damon, he's Christian. Cause like, it's just you see it all the time and it's normalized, right? But with us, anytime you see somebody who is physically, apparently Muslim, then you know that and it becomes part of who they are. But yeah, until we like just have normal characters who don't have to just speak about religion. Because like in our workplace and school and this and that, like how often are we talking about it? Like no, we just do our thing if we're practicing or whatever, and then we go on about it and we talk about sports and entertainment like this podcast is. So it's gonna be a hard thing to avoid, but it's gonna be there for a while.